Hi friends, I'm Ashley and welcome to Darling Cottage Diary. This week's a little different. I'm going to do a voiceover instead of my normal kind of text commentary and ASMR. I finally finished Wuthering Heights and I'm taking some inspiration from an old journal entry I had. This was before I started filming my art journaling. I had just started the book looking over this page, and it was interesting seeing the thoughts I had at the beginning of the book versus the thoughts I had when I finished it last night. So anyway, I wanted to make a nice cover for the copy that I have because, as you can see, it's very plain, and the dust jacket that I lost a long time ago, probably in a move, because it was just this kind of ugly yellow with the most unromantic picture of Yorkshire moors that you could ever imagine. And so maybe I burned it, I don't even remember. But I wanted to make a pretty cover, very, very Gothic Victorian cover, because if you've read the book, you know it is Gothic. So I'm just starting here, putting some acrylic paint straight on the book. It's nothing fancy, it's just this antique parchment color. I probably got it at Walmart. And it's I wanted something that looked a little aged and not too perfect, as is kind of my style if you've been around for very long. And the base layer, I was kind of okay with the darker background coming through because I knew I was going to be doing so many layers on top of it. This is my decoupaging solution that I really love, and it's just regular school glue, like PVA glue, Elmer's glue, whatever you want to call it. And then water, and I added some of the paint to give it a little bit of a colored texture as well. These are some pages of the book that I printed in high resolution, and I wish I would have annotated a little bit better to mark some of my more favorite passages and quotes, but for whatever reason I struggle to do that with my novels. I have no problem doing that with any of my nonfiction or like spiritual books or parenting books or anything else. It's just my novels I struggle to mark up. It's like those are the ones I want to keep pristine or something. But I tend to have the most opinions about the novels too, which is some kind of conundrum. Either way, I wanted the layered backgrounds to have parts of the actual book on it, but I didn't want them to be super legible. I just wanted it to be like this kind of ethereal coming through the mist thing. If you've read the book, or any of the Brontes really, they're all really atmospheric. The moors themselves and the weather kind of tend to be their own character in all of the books. And I have not read Tenant of Wildfell Hall yet. That's my last one, but Jane Eyre is one of my favorite books, and I wanted to like Wuthering Heights more than I did, but it is really good. I did really love it, and I love Emily's views of relationships and her views of, this it was like some kind of schadenfreude nicety to see that unhealthy relationships are not just a modern problem. They've been around at least since the Victorian era. So if you haven't read the books, you probably want to click off and wait till you do, because I am absolutely going to start talking about spoilers now. And also, you can't talk about this book without talking about the domestic abuse that goes on. So again, if you're a gentle listener when it comes to that kind of thing, I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot, but it is going to be mentioned, so just FYI. When it comes to the beginning of the book, I really liked a lot of it. As I said, the atmospheric qualities about which Emily writes, particularly of the houses themselves, the moors, the wind. She writes a lot about the wind, especially at the beginning. It's a very good book to start reading like in the fall or the winter,
because it really gets you in that kind of cozy mood of staying indoors by a heater or a fire and just watching the jury outside. But that is my favorite feeling. I love dreary, cold, rainy. If there's thunder too, it's great. I love that kind of weather. I like being out in it and cold and kind of like enjoying it, but also miserable. There's some sort of masochism there for me. And then going inside to a cozy, warm house that smells nice, and you have hot drinks and candles and books and all of the indoor cozy things. That's why fall and winter are my favorite half of the year. And so it's a perfect book to set that up. And I really liked the character of Heathcliff at the beginning. When he's a child, you can't help but feel for him and the difficulties he experiences with the different adults who are around him. And he does have one advocate who teaches him some kind of kindness, but for the most part, he is treated really poorly by everybody else because he is supposedly this foundling child, but it is suggested that he may be the illegitimate child of, the lord, the person who owns the house. I don't think he's a lord, but the person who owns the house. And, we're going to say Catherine 1, because there are two Catherines in the story. Catherine 1, she is a hot mess. It really is. But they get along really well, and they find some solace in each other because she also goes through, especially after her guardian dies, they all go through levels of emotional abuse, and that's hard to see, but they find solace in each other, and they also, it's clearly trauma bond, but it doesn't make it feel any less real. If anything, it probably makes it feel more real. And so that was difficult to read through a modern eye, because even though you know what is happening and you see what's happening, and maybe you understand the emotions they're having, it's like, oh, this is trouble waiting to happen. And as you can imagine, that trouble begins when all of these young characters grow into maturity and become young adults, and seeing them try to address feelings they have for each other is very interesting, because I wanted to physically yell at my book several times, and because a lot of us have made the same mistakes. A lot of us, it's just so relatable and it's so human. And to think that people were navigating this kind of relationships in the early 1800s and still do today, it's like we like to think that we're so much more evolved. We're really not. And I liked that part of the book, even though the characters were suffering quite a lot. And I don't want to say that this book is like miserable to read. It's not. It's fantastic to read. It's very, I love art that makes me feel, and it made me feel a lot, is I guess a good way to describe it. Because once they start going through the angsty teen years and early 20s years, they start making these permanent relationship decisions, because divorce wasn't something that happened very often back then. Women died in childbirth a lot. There were just, life was a lot more fleeting, and that was another lesson of the book that I really liked. So, we go through this very tumultuous kind of love triangle and come to a climax, and then this is the part of the book that I started to dislike Heathcliff, which is probably the most heartbreaking part of everything, because you're rooting for him from the beginning, or if you're a person who likes to root for the underdog, you're rooting for him from the beginning, and after the climax is when he just kind of descends into this depressed, sadistic revenge spiral, and that is hard to watch, because you want better for him and you want better for the people around him, because he lashes out a lot. And it made me sad to see this character who I really liked kind of fall apart that way. And this is where Catherine, too, kind of starts to come into the story. And she is not nearly as infuriating as her mother. But she still has her faults, but for the most part, she is extremely empathetic. And the only times where she's not is because she's in quite a lot of pain and feeling desperate herself. And seeing her relationship grow, her own like love triangle grow in such different ways was kind of a little bit of a saving grace to the book, but at the same time, the ending is very, very bittersweet. So before I continue with commentary, I did want to stop and thank my patrons for this month, for supporting me this month. Joanna, Florence, Rebecca, Sasha, Patsy, Teresa, Effie, Kim, Emily, Carly, Carrie, Sherry, Coco, Leprechaun Mom, Crystal, Tracy, Britt, Rebecca, Alicia, Kaija, I don't think I've ever said that out loud, sorry, Kenna, Rachel, Denise, W, Anna, Jennifer, Ariel, and Rasha. I appreciate you guys so much for supporting me, and if you haven't voted yet on this month's theme, please go do it. It's live on Patreon. And if you'd like to join us, we have Discord server benefits where everybody shares their projects they're working on. For one of the tiers, you get monthly Happy Mail from me. For all of the tiers, you get digital printables and all kinds of other fun stuff. So you can go to the link I have down below if you're interested in that. And back to the commentary. So just a few closing thoughts on the book. Overall, I did like it, and I think parts of the reason that I maybe didn't like different things is because it was so relatable. I could see my younger self and people I knew at some of their worst moments, and I think that's probably why it's such an enduring story, is that we can all relate to, you know, unanswered, unrequited love. We can all relate to not being in the healthiest relationships, but still needing to figure out who we are, and it's scary to do that alone. We've all probably done something out of spite, maybe made relationship choices out of spite. And so the relatability and the atmospheric qualities of the novel are for sure the best parts about it. And the unconventional way that Emily just put the whole society on blast was fantastic. And if you don't know that expression, I'm sorry. I'm a millennial. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Oh, and I am terrible about remembering to ask for likes and follows if you like this kind of content. Sometimes I talk, sometimes I don't. But it's all crafty things, journaly things, arty things. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.